So, welcome everyone. I'm Toby from Ealing and Hounslow CVS. Thanks for joining the Ealing Mental Health Forum. Before we start our main session, which is going to be mapping how to access mental health services, we're just going to have an overview from Sorab. I'm not sure if I pronounced your name correctly, from Read Easy Ealing, which sounds a great new initiative, something that I'm really excited is now covering Ealing, something that is so important for every aspect of people's lives, but particularly for people who need to access mental health services, because it's about helping people who can probably speak English but might have problems reading it. So, Saurabh, over to you, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Toby. In fact, thank you for inviting me, and thank you to Paru and Maggie for introducing me to you as well. It's my absolute pleasure to introduce Read Easy Ealing to you and have this opportunity to speak with you. And you got my name pronounced perfectly, so thank you again for that. Great. What I want to do today is really tell you a little bit about who I am and introduce you to Read Easy Ealing. I'll try and do it over the next 10-12 minutes, and then if there are any questions, I can take them now, or I can follow up with an email with the information I'm giving you and take it from there. I'm not presenting any slides today. It'll be just me that you'll be hearing and listening and seeing. So do give me do interrupt and let me know if you have any questions. Now, what was really interesting for me when I started my journey with Read Easy, which was just a few months ago, was nearly 6% of adults in Ealing, as per the 2011 Life survey for skills was conducted, showed that they either have an English capability of entry level 1, i.e. they're unable to read, or entry level 2, or unable to read at a very, very basic level. That amounts to nearly 14,000 adults in Ealing who are not able to read the language. Now, it shouldn't come as a surprise to you that poor reading skills are definitely associated with lower self-esteem, lower confidence, potentially isolation, depression, and then leading to poverty or homelessness and crime and so forth. I mean, the list goes on. In my association with Read Easy of other branches, there have been so many cases which have come across and examples where people have actually come up saying, I do not want to tell my employers I can't read English. I've got by for so long. I left school when I was 12 or 14. I would like to learn how to read English. Or I haven't read English before, but I have my grandchildren now. I would like to read to them. So there are various reasons people come in for learning how to read and various impact it has on their lives. And thus came Read Easy. And with that stat came Read Easy Ealing. My pioneer, Catherine Jeffrey, found this staggering, as all of us, and set up Read Easy Ealing with the support of Read Easy UK to provide, I mean, with a vision to provide the ability for all adults within Ealing to these skills they need to lead, to be able to live their life to the full potential and the way they would like to want it. Now, Read Easy, so who are Read Easy and who am I and why am I here today? Read Easy Ealing is, as I mentioned, run with the support of Read Easy UK. We are fully volunteer-based and run. It is run by a management team. So we have Catherine who leads it, but we have multiple and supported by multiple management team members, again, all volunteers, from publicists to treasurers to safeguarding officers, data protection officers to literacy specialists and referral networker, which is promoting who Read Easy are and talking to the likes of you to hopefully help. There's a leverage with organizations you deal with your own organization, or potentially people you come across in your everyday work and can refer them to Read Easy. We also have volunteer coaches who are trained by organization, and thus with the help of the literary specialist and our coordinators, we match the right potential reader or student with the coach so that they're able to get the maximum and are able to read fluently as they would like to. We are locally funded, so it's totally based on donations and we have someone within our organizations currently looking for recruiting that person, but are already gathering funds from within Ealing to be able to then help it. So from a point of view of the student, it is absolutely free. It is confidential. It is a one-to-one tuition class. And what Read Easy offer are half-an-hour sessions twice a week. They're also across Ealing Borough and at approved local venues. So we reach out to community centres, libraries to help us get access to rooms or spaces as donations, if you may like, so we can have face-to-face sessions. Obviously, in the last 18 months, that has been tough, but we have moved online, which means now students have an option to either do their coaching one-to-one online, or now with the government regulations, can do it face-to-face. In fact, just day before yesterday, we started our first reader coach session for Read Easy Ealing. To give you a little context, we came about to fruition only in March, April this year, and we're fully set up with a team. And now we've got our coaches ready and trained, many more in the waiting list, eager to volunteer. We're now looking for readers and promoting and spreading the word so we can get and help people who can really help from it. Now, so it's friendly, it's flexible, it's free, it's confidential. The thing I'd like to highlight is who could benefit from Read Easy. Some of it is obviously obvious. The thing I wanted to kind of highlight is it is not intended as a means of teaching the English language. So if someone doesn't know how to speak English at all, our program would not be able to help them. But we have got a few people who have come across to us, and we've naturally forwarded them and recommended them to ADCA or the Ealing Adults Education, who are able to take them up. So we do guide them appropriately. But we are successful for people who have got a reasonably fluent spoken English and some recognition of the basic words. One example of the assessment that we do, which I'd like to give you, is we present the potential reader with 3 cards: get well soon, best of luck, sorry to hear that. And ask them, what card would you give to your friend who's going for a driving test? So it's just trying to understand whether they have a basic recognition of some of the words or not, and whether they would, and there are a few more questions to just see if Read Easy can actually help them. And the turning pages manuals that we use will be appropriate for them and make them feel empowered to understand, read the language further. Also, based on Read Easy UK's experience and all the other branches, takes about 6 months to maybe up to 2 years for people to learn English. Now, it obviously depends on each individual, but that's the kind of commitment we are ready to put in with our coaches and have done so in the other boroughs, and are aiming to do so with Ealing, and do make it clear to the students as well, so they know what they're getting into. Most of them, again, with the other boroughs' experience, are very, very eager to do that. There have been a lot of success stories from there, which have only made our resolve stronger to kind of bring this to Read Easy Ealing. We've just started on the journey. This is why I'm here, to promote the organization, and we're very flexible in terms of how we work as well. So obviously, we're looking for funding opportunities, we're looking for donations, we're looking for venues within the Ealing Borough that can help. But right now we have coaches ready, and we're definitely looking for referrals from you or your partners or your organizations for potential students who can benefit from us. We also work with students who may have dyslexia or certain other backgrounds. For example, I've got in touch with the probation services as well. So it's a varied training program for our coaches to help varied students as well. And I'm not going to get into the detail of how you can send details. I mean, I'll send that deck around if that's all right, Toby. But basically, you can either contact us directly and I can send you the details, or we're more than happy for you to just give our details to the potential readers, and they can contact us. All I'd expect is, if you are sending their details, then you have consent from them. So that's a whirlwind view of who Read Easy are, what we're trying to do, where we've set up, and how we hope, working with you, we can together benefit the community within Ealing. I'm going to take a pause here and just ask if any one of you had any further questions or clarifications that you needed from me.
That sounds great. Thank you very much, Saurabh. And people at Ealing and Hounslow CVS, because we're based in West Ealing Library, so obviously be a great place to deliver some of your services. So yeah, anyone got a question for Saurabh?
I'm conscious I have been speaking for the last 12 minutes. So if there are any other questions, Toby, if it's all right, either I can send you this 5-slider deck to you, or if you want, I can do a reply all to your meeting invite and send this 5-6 slides out, which is literally the elements that I spoke about. And
you want to just send it to me, because then after the meeting I normally circulate things, so that's probably easiest if you.
Perfect. That's what I'll do. I'll send you that deck. You can share it with the teams, and obviously my contact details and my colleague contact details are there. So we would love to hear from you, and I really hope that we can become a part of your endeavors here as well, and share more details with you later as we progress along.
So just as a straw poll, does this, is everyone thinking, you know, are there clients in their back of their mind that are thinking all straight away that you can think of relevant people, or how does everyone feel about this service? Are you all kind of, oh, that's amazing, that's great, I know people straight away, or are you thinking, oh, maybe I'm going to have to kind of network a little bit? How's people thinking?
How do we refer to you if we come across a client that we think would benefit from your service? What's the best thing to do? How do we contact you?
So Caroline, I have the details on the deck, which Toby will share later, but essentially that detail either has my details where you can just forward those details to me, or it'll have details that you can pass on to the potential reader and they can contact us. So whatever way is most flexible to you or the reader.
Do you want to maybe just drop them in the chat right now as well, and then I'll send all the other information around. But yeah, if you just want to drop them in the chat, then if someone's really wanting to kick that off straight away, then they have your details.
That's great. Thank you.
What I'll do is I'll put the link of the page on our website, which has details of Jeff and Claire. Jeff is the contact for speaking with readers and linking them up with coaches, and Claire recruits volunteers, which means you'll have both the contact details and the numbers as well.
Okay, thank you.
Lovely. Okay then, so thank you very much again, Saurabh, very interesting. So now we're going to move on to the main focus of today. Now, so I don't know if you've looked at the Jamboard, which is basically a board where we move post-it notes, but I'm going to drop the link again into the chat. So anyone who hasn't been able to, hasn't had a chance to look at it, they can click on it right now. So I'm going to pop that in the chat. There's some few people joining us. Let's just put this in the chat first. Right, here we go. I'll just try and think that's everyone in the meeting. So what we're going to do is I'm going to share a screen, but if I'm going to ask you to move on the board, remember that you actually have to click on that link. It can be a bit confusing when you're seeing things on my screen, and sometimes I try and click on someone who's sharing their screen. So just remember to have 2 pages open, and you might have to go on the other one if I'm going to ask you to move. So basically, all right, I'm going to start sharing my screen, which is always tricky in Teams. But here we go. Here's my first one screen I'm sharing. So basically, I've got my my Post-its up, and I've made up some profiles of clients. So first of all, forgive me if it's a bit rudimentary, reducing people into these sort of categories and a little profile, and some of the names are a bit stereotypical. So I'm sorry about that. I was just trying to kind of summarize them so we can think about people's backgrounds and where they could be referred to. So I'm going to kick off, and have to admit I've had a little chat with Susan, and she's going to demonstrate first of all what we're going to do. So I'm going to ask Susan. So the first post-it note is Mr. Rogers. So Mr. Rogers, his profile is he's 27, lives at home with his parents. He's suffering from anxiety and insomnia. He spends a lot of time alone, very few friends. He's worked in the past as a postman, but had a foot injury and had to give work up. So he's now on benefits, but being pressurized to find work. So the object of this, I just thought we can understand people's thoughts of where they believe they could be referred to, and if the referral process, we've got some things here that are signed that we can drag along next to their post-it if they do need to be referred. But basically this whole mapping with the post-it notes is all about discussion, and it's going to clarify things in our heads for us so we can remember in the future what sort of people with what sort of backgrounds can access which mental health services and how. So, Susan, Mr. Rogers, would you like to move the post-it notes along to, so we've got different, I've written his name on different colored post-it notes, so you can move them. Obviously, you can talk about befriend, I'll put you here, about how he can access your services and if he needs a referral, and then you can put him under other headings and just kind of chatter through your thoughts on whether you know that they can access other mental health services and maybe what those are. And yeah, so just chat us through your thoughts as you're moving your post-it notes around.
Can you hear me okay, Toby? Because
yes, I can hear you. Yeah.
And you can see my my Jamboard as well.
Yes.
So if I move, Rogers. Okay, cool.
Brilliant.
So Mr. Rogers has been referred to befriend, and that's fine because if he fills our category, he lives alone, and he's over 18 and he lives in Ealing, so he's perfect for us, and that's brilliant. But we offer social and emotional support, so we might be looking for a little bit more for him. So I would quite like to, because he has anxiety and insomnia, and he, as far as I know, he's not being seen by anybody at in secondary care, so at any of the MINT teams. So I'd quite like to also see if I could refer him on to IAPT. I also know that sometimes he really struggles at night. He has insomnia, he has real problems sleeping, but just generally I think in the evenings is when he feels at his loneliest. And so I'm also going to see if I can send him along to Mind, because I understand that they have a new service at Mind that's a drop-in service for people in the evenings. So I would quite like to see if I can refer him to IAPS and refer him to Mind as well at the moment. Is that doable? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I know straight away that he'd be fine for IAPS because you can self-refer. But I was wondering if we got anyone on the call from Mind who might be able to chip in here. No, that's a shame.
Yeah, sorry. No. Hi, I'm here.
Oh, hi. Hi, Anne.
I think those are ideal referrals, to be honest. It will reduce his isolation. He can have some talking therapy and the Mind drop-in. It can be drop-in or it can be a telephone conversation, like the evenings out of hours.
Brilliant, thank you. Also, I'm a little bit worried because sometimes I think actually Mr. Rogers it's a little bit more than just sort of day-to-day anxiety that he is feeling, and I actually would quite like to see if it's possible also to refer him back to, or to refer him to one of the secondary services, to one of the Mint services. And I wonder how I go about doing that. Is it best for me to get in touch with the single point of access and then for them to refer him through to Mint?
Wondery, are you on this call?
Can't you refer via the GP, I think?
Yeah.
Yeah. I know Wanda said she was going to join us.
Hi there, it's Jillian from West London. I'm not able to answer this question, but Wanda did send through a note that she will join. She just isn't here at the moment right now.
Okay, lovely. Well, thanks, Gillian. And yeah, we can go back to it because that is a good question, isn't it? About Mr. Rogers. Susan, so you put him under IAPS. Now,
Yes.
IAPS you can self-refer or refer. Do you always, if you have those two options, refer the client yourself, or would you ever say to a client, obviously it's based on their sort of confidence levels.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, one of the things that that a befriender might help a client with is actually to be sitting with them when they're making phone calls that they perhaps find a bit more difficult. So it might be that the client is absolutely fine and can call IAPS themselves for that, or it might be that we say to them that they can access it through their GP and they can speak to their GP and see if their GP can refer them, because I think what we find as a voluntary sector organisation is that sometimes with IAPS it's easier for us to try and get someone referred through their GP, because it seems to me that if you've got an NHS email address, that some services pick that up better than if you're coming from the voluntary sector. So our first line of pursuit would probably be to ask Mr. Rogers to contact his GP, to speak to his GP about IAPS. Or if he would like us to do it, then potentially we could contact his GP with him. We could be in the room with him and help him to make that phone call to the GP to ask if they would refer to IAPS rather than the referral coming directly from us. Because it tends to just come a little bit quicker, we find, if it's coming from an NHS email address.
So, and I'm going to play devil's advocate here. How, Susan, are you going to know how Mr. Rogers is progressing with his appointments at IAPS if he doesn't tell you?
Oh, well, we're really lucky because we see our clients every single week. The whole point of the befriending service is that the befriender is in weekly contact with their client. They see them for usually about a couple of hours each week on a visit, or have a phone call with them lasting up to 2 hours. Also, as befriending coordinators, I have monthly contact either on the phone or through a visit with the client. So we're really lucky in that we have really regular contact with our clients, so we're well able to follow up on any referrals that we make.
But are you invited to other meetings, for example, with West London NHS Trust to discuss?
We've never been invited to a meeting, and I have asked sometimes when I'm aware. And it's funny because actually most of our referrals come through West London NHS Trust, and most of our referrals come from the old recovery teams, which are now part of the Mint. And although most of our referrals come from there, we've never been invited to a case meeting with them.
Okay. That's a shame.
You could refer them to advocacy, because we offer support at meetings like that.
Yep, fantastic.
So Susan, on the last pink post-it note with the question mark, do you want to pop on there any other services that you think then when in addition to advocacy, anywhere else you'd refer him to, or what's your thinking in terms of how much you offer? Could there be too many options for someone?
Possibly, and some of those options would eliminate some of the others, I think. So if we were looking at single point of access to try and access the Mint team, then that would eliminate IAPT for us, because I know that statutory and primary services don't work together in that, or haven't in the past worked together in that way. I'm not quite sure now that Mint's here, but I know that in the past, if someone was with the secondary services of one of the recovery teams, the IAPS then wouldn't work with them as well. So yes, so working with IAPT and working with single point of access wouldn't both happen at the same time. So I'll maybe take one of them out. He's on benefits and is struggling and feeling that he's being pressurised back to work. So I also wondered about possibly sending him to Ealing Advice to see that if he could get some advice about his benefits as well.
Yeah. Really good.
Can I type in that box?
Yes, you can. Yeah, just click on that and you can type it in there.
Can I also suggest something like Mind Food, you know, to reduce his isolation?
Yeah. And maybe volunteering.
People, ecotherapy.
Yeah, volunteering to keep him busy, connected to other people, make him feel valued and increase his self-esteem. So that's great. Okay, let's move on to the next client, and I'm going to pick someone at random, I'm afraid. Now, if I pick on you and you don't know the answer, please don't feel bad. I'm not doing this. It's to make a discussion, and if you don't know, then you know everyone else is going to chip in. So Miss Jones is 58, lives on her own, used to live with her mother, but her mother recently passed away. She suffers from OCD and agoraphobia. Right, I'm going to pick on Francis. Just thinking about you setting up your drop-in and just to see where you could advise people to go. Is that okay, Francis?
I was just really hoping you weren't going to say me. I need to open the detail. Can you just read through the details about Miss Jones again?
Yes. So she's 58, lives on her own, used to live with her mother, but her mother recently passed away, and she suffers from OCD and agoraphobia.
Right. And we're assuming she's not under mental health services already, are we?
That's correct, yes.
So I think, I mean, I'm coming from a point of almost zero knowledge here of the services out there. But with my sort of nurse's hat on, I would say almost certainly she would need some professional NHS help through the GP, possibly to IAPTs. I'm not quite sure how it works. I mean, the difference between the West London NHS Trust and IAPTs, because it seems to me it's one or the other, really, isn't it? Because I think they work fairly closely together. Is that correct?
That's a good question, and my instant answer to that is not that closely, but anyone please correct me if that's not right. I view IAPS as quite separate to West London NHS Trust. Susan, would you agree with that?
Yeah. Sorry, my understanding is that if people are with any of the secondary services through the NHS Trust, so if they're with the recovery what was the recovery teams is now the MINT teams. They won't be seen as IAP. The IAP only works with people who are still within the primary care.
Yeah.
So GPs or primary care nurses or social prescribers or
right. Okay. Yeah. So yes, a social prescriber would be a good person here, since we now are using them increasingly in general practice. I'm thinking some sort of bereavement support as well.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's where you guys at Befriend would come in. Do you offer that sort of bereavement counselling?
No, we don't.
Not really. Okay.
Our befrienders are all volunteers, and it's to be there alongside someone. But actually, sometimes what works very nicely is that we could help to refer someone to an organisation like Cruise or some other kind of bereavement support counselling.
Sure.
And then we could be there, because sometimes it's quite hard to process all of that when you don't have anyone to talk to about it. So where the befriender would come in is they'd be the person that could be there to talk after the bereavement therapy to just help people process that more.
Yeah, so there's definitely you know, an advantage in a referral to you. Now I'm slightly struggling here because I'm assuming now that she's gone to IAPT, and therefore we wouldn't need the single point of access. I'm sure Mind has lots to offer, but as to the details, I don't know, and I slightly feel that too many referrals all at once is probably a bit counterproductive. That maybe you know, people will refer on to other services if they feel that's appropriate. It sounds as if that's exactly what you do at Befriend, and hopefully IAPS would as well. I'm just looking at, I mean, I don't know, we don't know what her employment situation is, do we? We don't know if she's going to need benefit support, but that's very possible, I imagine. And who is, please, this is, I'm learning here, who is the best person to provide that sort of support? Who's the best?
I think my concern is her, what is it, agoraphobia and what was it, OCD?
OCD, which I think would need professional help.
Needs a mental health assessment just to see, because you don't know how chronic it might be, and also her home situation. You don't know how much codependence there was between her and her mother.
Absolutely, yeah.
So can she get out? Can she get out at all? Can she do stuff? So I would be approaching the MINT teams.
Okay.
I keep losing myself, and as for benefits, you know, her income and so on, Ealing Advice Service would help with that.
Right.
Yeah.
Can everyone see my screen okay? Because I'm just having to tag in between to let more people in, and I just want to make sure you can all see my screen.
Right. Bereft cruise benefits. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, well, let's move on to the next client. So I'm going to pick on someone else. So let's read it first. So Mrs. Vattel's 54, lives with a very large extended family. Son passed away 2 years ago. Previously worked as a cleaner, but had to give up work due to bad back. Does not work at the moment. Has panic attacks when goes out on own. So I'm going to ask, how about Maggie Carey? Can I pick on you?
Hi there. Sorry, let me just read it through again. Her son passed away 2 years ago. Previously worked as a cleaner, but had to give up work.
Oh, okay. I see Wanda's here. Hi, Wanda. Thanks for joining us.
I'm sorry I'm late.
No worries. So we've just started mapping a few things, and we'll go back to you in a minute. I've just put Maggie on the hotspot. She's our next person playing on this mapping session. So I've given her the profile, and I'm just going to. It's about kind of picking out the knowledge that Maggie's already got and kind of filling in the blanks.
So obviously we come from the benefit perspective as a disability advisor at the job centre.
Mhm.
So this lady doesn't, I mean, there's the panic attacks, obviously that needs support, and that could be IAPT, that could be, and what I wanted to mention as well, they don't need to go to their GP to refer to IAPT. People can self-refer by just calling. And sometimes that process with customers we've dealt with has been quicker by them just self-referring, going online or calling IAPT, because the GP's got so much work to do that the referrals often takes longer in our experience. So I would say she lives with large extended, yeah. So she may have support from her large extended family. She may need support with applying for benefits because you're saying she does not work now. And she previously worked as a cleaner but had to give up work due to a bad back. So it could be she could go through, claim her universal credit. She could ask to speak to a disability advisor, a disability employment advisor like Paru and myself at the job centre, because even though she's had to give up work due to her bad back, it might be we could discuss other types of work she might be able to do. And also, there was something that was mentioned earlier, which on the first case about, and Gina mentioned in the chat about they at the job centre they do a claimant commitment. So that's something that we can discuss what they can and can't do. And if people are feeling pressure, as we're saying from the job centre, it could be that it's just not been explained properly, or they haven't had an appropriate conversation with their work coach as to what they can and can't do. And we can limit, we've got discretion to limit what people do at the jobs. You know, we've got, and we ask them as well, they can get a fit note and have a capability assessment. There's all sorts of routes through the job centre where we can restrict lots of things. And if there's any problems with all of that, you can always ask to get in contact with the disability advisor like Paru or myself, and we can look into that. So let me see. The problem with these is that they're quite simplistic, and there's lots of questions that we'd want to talk to the person to find out more context to see exactly what's required. And as other people have suggested, we don't want to refer too many things at once. So I would think the panic attacks is obviously maybe the major concern because she's not going out.
So let's put. Does everyone know what IAPS actually do and IAPS stands for? It's
improved. Oh, sorry.
Go on. Someone started saying it.
Improved access to psychological therapies.
Yeah. So it's like a range.
Mainly CBT, I think, don't they?
Yeah.
I have a feeling.
They also do things like a whole range of different treatments, including, I know they even do rapid eye movement treatment to kind of process trauma, and a whole range of kind of tapping therapy. So to my knowledge, it's specific treatments that can be accessed very easily. I think some of them online, some can be groups. It's not so much talking therapies, but it's specific therapies that can help with particular issues and concerns. Would you agree, Wanda? Is that right?
Yeah, I'm just putting in the chat a list of things that they offer, but it's mild to moderate anxiety, depression on the spectrum, panic disorder, social anxiety, general anxiety disorder, post-traumatic, long-term conditions such as diabetes, long COVID, COPD, IBS. They also do a bit of couples, psychological therapy, CBT counseling. You've mentioned EMDR, so the trauma response. So quite a bit, and they're actually expanding some of their remit as well and increasing the volume that they take on through IAPT. So that's going up to 22%. So a lot more actually is going to be coming through IAPT over the next couple of years, particularly through the long-term plan expansion. So a lot more.
That's great. Thanks. Okay, Maggie, you did a great job then. Thank you very much. I'm going to pick on someone else now. I'm going to pick on Caroline, social prescriber. I bet she'll know about this. So Mrs. Zadrowski is 48, lives in temporary accommodation. She's got limited English. Her husband recently left her. No family in the UK or in Poland, doesn't want to return home as relationship strained with family, suicidal thoughts. So Caroline, where would you suggest? Oh, I think Caroline's frozen. That's a shame. I'm just going to tidy up this board at the moment. Actually, I put, let's see, maybe that's Caroline at the door again. Let's have a look. Can't see. No, she must, maybe she's got internet problems and dropped out. Okay, I'm going to ask, how about Danielle at the Cuckoo Lane practice? Sorry to pick on you.
Can you just repeat some of the details, Toby?
Yeah. So we're looking at Mrs. Zadrowski. She's 48 and lives in temporary accommodation and has limited English. Her husband recently left her. She's got no family in the UK or in Poland, doesn't want to return home as relationship strained with family, and she has suicidal thoughts.
In terms of the suicidal thoughts, I'd want to refer her to single point of access.
Yep.
In terms of the temporary accommodation, might want to explore that a bit more. She might need some housing advice from Ealing Advice Service or someone like Shelter. If she sounds quite isolated with no family in the UK or in Poland, so could look into a befriending service for her or local just activities that she wants to get involved in, community groups and things. In terms of the limited English as well, we might look at like some course in terms of learning English for her. Yeah, I think
that's great. That's really good.
Can I also suggest for suicidal thoughts, safe space at Mind, where she can drop in or have, telephone contact in the evening.
Can I also suggest the listening place for suicidal thoughts as well? A really good service. They're based outside the borough, but they work with anyone in London. And also, I can't remember the name of the organisation, but I know that several times at the Mental Health Forum, there's been a woman on who's been from the Polish Society, the Polish. Do you know how I mean? Pulse and Need, that's the one. Yeah.
Brilliant. That's really good, Danielle. Danielle, you did an amazing job then.
Thank you.
So, Wanda, what services could our client, Mrs. Zadrowski, access through Mint, and how would she go about them? Wanda, you're on mute.
I just realised that. Talking away and I'm on mute. So through the GP is the first point of call, and then we can triangulate from there. So we've funded like a number of services. So Learn English at Home, that's the LEA service, that's third sector. There's also groups within Mint that offer support around suicidal thoughts. There's also links with our peer workers as well. So I think there are a few options other than the ones that we've mentioned, like Mind and Spa. But I would say if somebody is calling up, they would probably call through Spa. But if they're going to their GP, it would probably be maybe easier or quicker to go through the GP and come through Mint, because we share one system now, so referrals come directly to the service.
Okay, that's interesting. And I've got my other board here that we can jump to in a minute that I've done specifically for Mint, because it'd be interesting to know if there's specific contacts at Mint, and we can maybe do those as well. But we'll go to that in a minute. But that's really interesting. What about wait times? Now, I know you can't answer that, but vaguely, if this client needed some specific help, what can you give us an indication of wait times? How long you might have to wait?
So currently our wait times are longer than we want to be, and I think it's just because we're settling into a new system. But the plan is to be seen within 28 days from the point of referral to treatment in 28 days. Right now, we're at double that, just because the service has gone from being 2 services to 1 service. And I think we've still got multiple referrals coming in. So we've got GPs referring through Spa and then sending it through System 1. And yeah, so instead of just referring in one place, they're referring in every place. So we've got some challenges around that, but that's the plan, referral to treatment in 28 days.
Okay. Right, let's move on to our next client. So Caroline, I put you on the spot and then you froze. So lovely to see you back. So I'm going to give you a different client now. And Danielle took your place and did an amazing job.
Oh, brilliant.
So I'm going to, let's talk about Mr. Brown. So Mr. Brown is 42, on universal credit, and has substantial debts. He's using the food bank. Hasn't got a fixed abode. He's sofa surfing and has had drug and alcohol abuse issues in the past. Now, those, I think, yeah.
Okay. Well,
Right, talk us through your thoughts for Mr. Brown.
All right, so I think the first thing that I would look at really is asking him about where he's staying at the moment, the sofa surfing, in order for him to feel secure. I think that he would have to have a secure home somewhere. So I would refer him to something like shelter or the local housing associations or the local council to get him on the housing list and to find out what his needs are there. As far as him being on universal credit and in debt, I'm pretty sure that the local JCP have got debt advice as well. So I would be looking at referring him to some debt advice and actually looking at how he's spending his money and how he can make savings in his money so he'd be able to really afford the right nutrition with what he's got, his food, rather than going to the food bank. You know, sometimes when people are in debt, it's because they're unable to manage money, and so he's not able to manage money, so he's not able to feed himself. He may not have been able to pay his rent, and maybe that's why I'm making a lot of assumptions, but you know, it's really to sit down and really talk about what's important to him. Really, I think if he came to us as a social prescriber, that's what we'd do. We'd look at him holistically, and yeah, I think that would be some of the things that I would refer him to. What else did you say? He's 42 and he's living on a sofa with his friends.
He's had drugs and alcohol
Yeah, drug and alcohol. There is. You did a presentation a couple of weeks ago for, I can't remember the name of it now, but it's drug and alcohol and mental health, dual diagnosis.
Yeah.
I think they would be a perfect referral for him, because, you know, very often when people have drug and alcohol problems, there could be mental health issues as well. And, you know, so yeah, that's my thoughts.
Wow, that was a very good answer. I'm impressed. So, Caroline, tell us how long you give your clients when they come to see you, because as it's holistic, you know, it could be quite a long time you spend with
Yeah.
them. So tell us about the process in terms of how long they have to wait to see you and things like that. It'd be really interesting.
Okay, so currently we're working, Danielle and I are working in Ealing, and we see people within 10 days, even shorter than that right now, because it's a new service and we're trying to make sure that we see people as quickly as possible. And then what I normally like to do is I try and go and see the person at where they are, rather than coming into the GP's surgery. I want to make that person feel as comfortable as possible. And by maybe going into their home where they're in their own domain, they would feel freer to talk and to be more open about what's really going on and what's really important to them. My first appointment is normally about an hour, and it really depends on, we go through every area, we go through debt, we go through money, what's important to them, a job, where they're living, all of those things. We break it down, and then we come up with a plan for them. It's led by them, their plan, what they want to do, set themselves goals, and then we'll see them over a period of 6 appointments. Sometimes it takes longer, sometimes it's just a referral. But with this gentleman, I think that he would benefit from the full 6 appointments, so that we're walking him through. I mean, some people, we need to take and hold their hand to services, to take them to services. I've got a lady that, at the moment, she's an Asian lady in her 80s, and I'm picking her up and taking her to a ladies group next week. So, because she's not done it for a while, she's not been out. So I think sometimes that's the best option, is to walk people through and meet them where they're actually at. So yeah, that's.
And what's your caseload like? How many clients do you have on your books at one time?
At the moment, I've got 20. I only work part-time, but we can have up to about 35 at any one time as a full-timer, and that's per month. So we try and, GPs are very busy, and their 10-minute slots they're not going to be able to get to the root cause of anything that's involving somebody's life. No. They'll go and they'll say, oh, I've got depression. They'll maybe get a pill or whatever they need to get, or be referred to services. But we're social prescribers. We sit and we really talk about what's important to you, and looking at their strengths from a strength point of view, rather than talking about the negatives. We can address that as we go along, but really looking and pulling out the strengths of that person. So that's why we give them an hour.
Yeah.
Can I ask, Caroline, how do we refer to the social prescribers?
Well, at the moment it's through GPs, but when the program, because it's really in its infancy this year, this is the first year in Ealing, really. We're hoping, we're actually hoping to get the Joy database on board, which would make life a lot easier and be more time efficient. And I think that if you come across a client, we're hoping that we're going to get an individual referral. We've got a referral form that we've put together. We can send out referral forms, but at the moment it's just through GPs. And obviously, if somebody hasn't not got a GP, we're looking at connecting with those in the community to refer into us personally. I know that, you know, right now my concern is refugees. I'm really wanting to work with refugees who don't have any abode, don't have a GP. That's the next thing that I think that us as social subscribers should be looking at.
And this is a really cheeky ask, Caroline, and maybe it's something we need to talk about at another time. But I can't help but think that the social prescribers and befriend sit really nicely together. So sometimes the issue for us is exactly what you're saying about your lady that wants to go to a group and you end up taking her. So I would very much see that as being something that a befriender could be involved in, helping people to access things in the community. The problem for us and befriend is that we don't always know what the things are that are out there in the community. So, you know, maybe there's a...
Actually, to tell you that the lady that I'm taking, you are going in to see her as a befriender. Okay. And she's asked me to find groups in the community. Yeah. So, yeah, so I'm going to take her. I mean, you know, I would say that, yes, it is something that you could possibly do. And if you could do it, all well and good.
Yeah, it's just for us, it's just finding out what they are. So that's where we would want to pick your brains, I think.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. Do that. Yeah, it's about connecting and it's about constantly feeding back. And I think that way, if I'm feeding back to you to let you know what's happening with this person and what her needs are, she may talk to the volunteer about that. Oh, I want to go out to groups. And it may be something that would be brought up in a conversation that you could then feed back to me. And then I could look for a group, so it's all about communication, keeping the lines of communication open, really. Yeah.
And sorry, just one more question. My understanding is that because you were kind enough to email them for me the other day, that there's 10 social prescribers in Ealing, is that right?
Yeah, well, there was 12. I think, yeah, there's about 10. Yeah, there's about 10. We're involved, the 10 PCMs, different PCMs across Ealing, but we're involved with 10 surgeries, as Daniel and I are in the Ealing 10 PCN network, but there are the GP Federation, there's different PCNs all across the borough of Ealing. But yeah, I did email all that I know about.
Lovely, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, let's we'll do one more client profile and then we'll go on the board for Mint and we'll map a few things there. So I can't, lots of people turn their cameras off, maybe because they don't want me to pick on them. So Caroline, would you like to choose someone? You might be able to see different people than I can. Choose the next person to play the referral game. Who would you like to ask?
I can't actually see everybody. Hang on, let's have a look. I don't know. Who's Gina Hayden? What about Gina?
She'll know loads. Yes, she's a very she knows. Yeah,
that's not
maybe someone else. She'll know. Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, Gina, to say no. I don't want her, but I know you. I know you know lots.
Okay, all right. I don't know. Really. Let's have a look. I see a lot of link workers on here as well. All right, what about Brenda Clark?
Okay, Brenda. Right. Gina said her microphone is not working. Someone else might try that in a minute. Right. So who did you say? Sorry, Brenda.
Yeah.
Okay, so Brenda, we're going to talk about Mr. Azar. He's 32 and has low self-esteem and self-worth and suicidal tendencies. His family disowned him due to his sexuality. He lives alone in a bedsit and recently lost his job in retail. So if he came to see you, where would you suggest on this board Mr. Azar could be referred to? Are you there? Can you see them, Caroline?
Yeah, the person is there, but whether they're able to talk, or maybe they're not able to talk. Okay. Okay, well, what about Bethany?
Bethany. Okay, Bethany, are you there?
Hiya. Yeah, I'm here.
Bethany, hi. Thank you. I'll just run through again the profile. So we're discussing Mr. Azar. He's 32, low self-esteem and self-worth and suicidal tendencies. His family disowned him due to his sexuality. He lives alone in a bedsit and recently lost his job in retail. So if he came to see you, where would you suggest, where would you refer him to, or who would you suggest he sees?
So for the suicidal tendencies, refer to the single point of access.
Yep, shall I move the card along for you?
Thank you.
Yeah.
And also previously, I think we also mentioned the listening place in the where else comments as well.
Yeah.
We've spoken to them in the past and we work with them as well through some of our sort of crisis services in the community. Also, due to it sounds like he's quite isolated as he's no family, hasn't got a job and is also alone in a bedsit. So would it be appropriate to refer him to the Linked Minds and see if there'd be a befriender available? And also if there's any local mind services as well. I think it was mentioned before that there's a safe space in Ealing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if there's any, I think that's it, but local, if there's any sort of like local sort of floating support in terms of holistic support for his employment needs. So there's any local organisations that can help him access sort of employment, CV writing, and possibly as well housing services as well.
Women's Against Poverty run a job club.
Yeah.
And also there is the Short Trust run jobs club.
And we work with Twining on the IPS work service, so it might be appropriate for him. It's specifically aimed at people from BAME backgrounds.
Brilliant. Yeah, it's really good. So what about if Mr. Azar needed West London NHS and Mint? So maybe if we go to our other tab here. So thanks, Bethany. That was a really good answer. Thank you. So let's go to our other tab here and wonder, can we discuss these now? I'm thinking maybe Mr. Azar, use him as an example of this.
Toby, can I just say, it's Valerie from the Ealing Care Service. What about the parents? Would there be any support for the parents in that case, even though they've disowned him?
I'm sure there would be. Anyone like to chip in with an answer on that? That's quite difficult.
So I think this is I think where it gets a little bit grey, because you'd have to take consent as well if they're an adult. We couldn't just reach out to the parents if they're disowned him and they're not a active part of his care. So I think we'd have challenges around trying to intervene without having the consent in that sense.
It was just maybe, maybe the parents could, or somebody could help make the parents understand his situation, like, his sexuality and, his mental health as well.
If he consents to so if it's from West London, if he consented that he wanted them to be a part of his treatment, because obviously if it's causing the person more distress, we can't enforce that. We have to think about the person's well-being in the first instance.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that is a very good point there to
Yeah.
think about, you know, that is resolving something, a key
Yeah.
issue. So yeah, it's a bit of a tricky one, but that's a really good point.
Yeah. I just, you know, part of maybe his mental health is because that his family won't accept who he is. Therefore, you know,
And I think,
you know,
and there's the grey line. It's like, it's, I think within Mint, so there's several things that you could offer in Mint. So we have acceptance and commitment therapy. So it's there. It's a group offer. It's light touch, but it also goes through if he was doing well, if he was going through different sort of therapeutic offers, stabilization, supporting with coping strategies and things like that, and then went on to maybe an ACT group. It's also about sometimes understanding that parents might not change their mind, and can you accept that? So sometimes acceptance and commitment therapy is really great for when you can't change something, and how does the person then manage to continue and still have fulfillment in their life without having a knock-on impact on other areas. So there is that. If you referred to Mint as well, there is peer and link workers as well, so they could support with third sector organisations, and you've already mentioned all of those. So that's if you didn't go to SPA, if it came through the GP, say.
okay, thank you.
And then there's also, we've mentioned the Vocational Recovery Service, IPS and Twining, so we work across that to look at job retention or placement support. So quite a holistic offer. If the person wanted to access mental health services, there is quite a holistic offer there. Alternatively, I think there's some people who just don't really want to access mental health services, and there's something around changing the stigma within communities. So looking at some of the third sector organisations that we fund. So Metro and NAS are one of the organisations that deal with BAME and cross-sectionally with those who identify as any point of LGBTQ+. So there is that support, and they offer signposting and treatment and therapeutic interventions as well. And that's more community-based.
Hi, it's Joy. Hello, sorry, just to chip in. I put Stonewall in the chat, but also I've just had a nosy, and you can put postcode in, and it's really useful because it gives you lots of other things that you can go to. So London Friend, for example, is a charity supporting health and mental well-being for the sort of LGBT community. So it's quite a good little database there, just for anybody that's supporting somebody.
That is interesting. I didn't know that they offered that you could put your postcode in. So that's really good, really interesting. So Wanda, you were saying about acceptance and commitment therapy. I'm just putting in a few more things here. I don't know if you want to shout out anything else that isn't on this list. It'd be just a really good opportunity to start filling this in.
Yeah.
So
there's coping strategies, there is assertiveness, there is CBT, DBT.
I'm a bit confused there. As soon as you say CBT, I thought that was through just IAPS.
No, so within Mint there is it's a groups offer. It's lighter touch. So the first point of call would obviously be IAPT, because they'd offer the different number of sessions. And I suppose they also look at different levels of severity as well. So we always still say that IAPT is still probably the best and the first point of call, and then Mint would still come second, but we do offer that in group therapy as well. So when we think about people that have multiple needs or multiple complexities, then we can offer layers of groups, or sometimes we'll work with IAPT to see them for their social housing, employment support, and then link up with IAPT, who will probably be delivering the other aspects, such as the therapeutic aspect. So the services do work together in that way as well.
Right. So, and also I've got here, just to check these other things you offer: creative writing therapy, drama therapy, music therapy. Then I've added that new one: acceptance and commitment therapy, coping.
Yeah, coping strategies. There's loads of maybe it's easier as well if I send a list, because we also have outdoor walking groups, OT groups, cooking groups. So there's
Really?
there's loads under OT as well.
Okay, didn't know that. No.
Can I ask a question? Sorry, because I'm slightly detached from my knowledge of Ealing these days, but does the Recovery College still happening?
Yeah, so
Yeah,
there's
brilliant.
so there's then there's everything in the Recovery College as well. So we would, some of these courses or offers link up with the Recovery College because it's a central hub where they're offered, and it's easier for people to access them that way, and then we can make sure that they're recurrent.
Okay.
Hi, I have a question as well, if you don't mind. It's actually for everyone. I'm thinking, I know that referrals to IAPT are always better coming from a GP, but sometimes it's really, really hard for us to get, we might call the GP, send them emails and not get a response at all. So I have done several referrals myself. They always end up in nothing really, maybe because they're coming from a charity, but my biggest concern is really, I have referred people, for instance, with a panic disorder, so things that are quite manageable with things like CBT, and they've been rejected. My biggest concern is really around our clients that have an underlying diagnosis. For instance, I have a client who has a diagnosis of schizoaffective disorder, and she needs CBT right now to cope with a phobia, so to cope with a fear of drowning and a fear of water. So her underlying diagnosis, which is schizoaffective disorder, is extremely well managed. The problem is that already makes her unsuitable for IAPT. So I'm thinking, is there anything else besides private counselor or a private psychotherapist that we could offer her? Or she's under the recovery team and they won't refer her to therapy. So, but she needs it. She's ready to engage. She's kind of in like a kind of a limbo. In that way, what would be the best place to refer her to, and or what other options do we have? Because a lot of our clients have schizophrenia, bipolar, and in those terms, they're really, really well managed. It's just that they need extra help for other things that are quite simple.
So in terms of the more simple things, I suppose there's lots of offers within Mint to support with, in terms of OT, if it's things around activities of daily living and things like that. I'm just trying to think about what her therapeutic path was, because where they've got within the teams, where they've got somebody who's come in and they've got multiple needs, they usually have what they call a complex case forum. So all the professionals come together to discuss what might be the best next steps. The pathways within Mint, though, they don't have psychotherapy as such as an offer anymore, because it doesn't sit within the national guidance or treatment plans, and usually they have like how long they expand over. So there is a change in terms of commissioning of services that's happening around that, but I don't know where that would sit. That's just a bit of a limit in my knowledge really there. But I don't know if the GP would then make a referral to other services, other psychological services. I'm not sure.
The problem we have, for instance, with her is that because she is under the recovery team, the GP really won't touch a referral for that because she's already under. I'll give you more details. So in her case, she is under the recovery team, but she hasn't had a care coordinator in a very long time, and she's kind of in the waiting list for a care coordinator. I've been in contact with them, trying to have the person on duty to call me, but they haven't called me back. It's been a couple of weeks and several emails, and they haven't replied to me. And again, the GP will tell me something like, she's already under the secondary so she's under secondary care, so it's really not their job to refer her. So it leaves me and I work for a befriending service, so it leaves us kind of in a limbo of, okay, what can we actually offer? Because we do see her every week, we can tell that she's ready to engage with therapy that could improve her life very much, but we don't know what route to go. And even with private therapists, oftentimes if they see an underlying diagnosis such as schizoaffective disorder, they will say too complex without really assessing the person, because it's one of the most, qualified as serious ones. I think that's a challenge that Susan and I encounter very frequently, and it's quite frustrating because we can see how the person could benefit from it and how they're ready, but that doesn't necessarily but that's not what IAPT thinks, or what the GP thinks, or the recovery team. So I don't know, just thinking, just putting it out there, thinking if anyone has any ideas on how to navigate.
So in terms of what we're trying to do in mental health, and maybe I can touch base with you, Irene, after this call, because you might be able to help us with something we're trying to do in West London Trust. But we're trying to develop a new service for complex emotional needs. And we're still trying to outline the people that sit between pathways and services that do get help, but doesn't quite meet their need exactly. Yeah. And we're trying to build a number of cases to try and understand what the gap is in services around that. And I've been trying to contact people, actually trying to look for service users, carers, people who work in organisations that encounter complex cases. So that's why I was hoping we could possibly touch base offline, but that is something that we're trying to look to develop. So it's a pathway that would support those who don't sit traditionally in recovery teams or MINT, those who wouldn't necessarily sit within the long-term rehab pathway, those that might bounce around between crisis and other services and really need some sort of support. So they're known as tier 3 services, or tier 3 PD kind of services, or what we're calling complex emotional needs, because it's complex and there's lots of things going on. So we're trying to develop a service like that. So I wonder whether she would be the kind of person who would benefit from a service as such. But generally it's challenging to find the right place or the right types of resource, because we're trying to work in a way where we're not being descriptive on diagnosis, yet support multiple needs.
And yet I totally get what you're saying, but yet again, because we have to include the diagnosis, which is in a way kind of a historical thing in her case, it affects her access to services. Because even referrals, if nothing else works, in a few weeks, we will try to do a referral for a private service, which offers a sliding scale, so she might be able to afford it. But I'm not quite sure that reading the diagnosis, they'll be like, yes, because I've been told so many times in the past, no, too complex, too complex, too complex. And it's like, well, they're not necessarily reading my description of what their specific needs are. And the clients are very aware and very specific that they'll only be going to, however many sessions of CBT to deal with that specific problem, not with the whole their whole complexity. But I still get a lot of, no, too complex for us, sorry, too complex for us. And I get it, but yeah, it's
okay.
it's quite frustrating for us.
Do you want to put your number in the chat for Wanda? Maybe she can give you a call.
Yes.
Yeah, pop that in. And also I see Iranda wants to ask a question. I don't know if Wanda just answered it in the chat, but if you want to come in there. So Irandawa.
Sorry, Slackfear. Hi. Oh. Sorry, my internet connection disrupted there for a moment. I think Wanda has answered, but I think it'd be useful to understand. Right, okay, let me rewind. I think what you said there about people not being on a referral pathway and falling in between the referral pathways is actually really interesting, because that probably then identifies that kind of need for holistic responses to people rather than having them going down a particular route. And I think, it'd be interesting to see how MINT is overcoming that, because that's the whole one of the premises of MINT, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really challenging, because some services are very clearly defined by treatment and needs, like early intervention for psychosis. It's a very clearly defined pathway. And then for everybody else under the new ways of working for the long-term plan, it's this idea that we move away from strict diagnosis and support people based on what are their needs. And so trying to navigate that in a new system is quite challenging when you're working with still quite some very traditional services. And I don't think we'll really see the full impact of Mint just yet. We've got loads of referrals now. We've opened the door. It's like a floodgate of referrals that have come through for services. So we're still trying to make our way through that and trying to see how the system settles down, and then therefore what's still missing. You know, we can only plan for what we know, and then when you open the door, you start to understand what you don't know because you get more referrals, which is great. So, but it still, that means that we're constantly going to have to be in developing new offers, new services, new treatments to make sure that we're caring for the population, but also probably working closer with third sector organisations who do stuff, some stuff just loads better than trusts or NHS services do, because they're more linked with the community.
Can I check, and I'll finish. When you've said multi needs, sometimes under community treatment order, multi traumas, emotional complexities. What does that do to, though? Because sometimes we as an organisation work with, we would probably phrase it differently. You know, we work with, say, for example, women with complex needs related to substance misuse, domestic violence, and mental health, and not necessarily in terms of what that means in terms of the symptoms.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying? So we work at the other end, and I'm just interested to see what is it that sits underneath, what is the trend that sits underneath these complexities that you're working with?
Everything. This is the thing.
Everything.
It's literally everything, because somebody could be via the medication quite stable, but then they have multiple complexities. They've got housing, they've got multiple trauma, they've got children, they've got finance or job issues, then they've got mental health needs, then they've got relationship challenges or difficulties. So and on top of that, they could have a community treatment order, they could have been sectioned, you know. So I suppose what I'm saying is, those with complex care could sit under any one of those categories and then have multiple symptoms and needs, or could sit under one category and have multiple needs. So I suppose I'm just listing out broad spectrum what that could look like. Or they could have social care needs or need a mental health act assessment. So I suppose complex care could be a number of factors.
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
is it possible to follow up outside of this meeting? Because that sounds very much like the work that lots of other services are providing in the community, but we perhaps don't articulate it in the same way, possibly. In terms of working with complex clients and complex needs, it's that holistic element, isn't it? When you're looking at everything that that person is presenting with, and then having to draw a package of support around that.
Mint's primary principle works using dialogue, so it's a discursive tool that helps understand what are the areas of needs. And then we look at what is the most primary presenting need, because people would usually come to services and they have mental health needs, but sometimes it's tripled, well, I'm losing my job and I've got a family and I'm going to lose my home, and what am I meant to do? And they're stressed and they're anxious and they're depressed. But the primary need wasn't their stress and anxiety and depression. It was the core root was, I'm losing my job, you know. So I think under Mint, what we're trying to understand is what's the core aspect first, and let's look at that as well as all the other factors. So it is that holistic approach, but rather than taking this medical route, it's taking this social, psychological, then a biological perspective to support care and treatment.
Okay, I'm just going to wrap this up a little bit, if I may. Now, I just want to get this board all correct, so when I can send it around to other people. So I put in here about its referrals to Mint via GP. It sounds like they happen faster, but you can refer if you're a supporting organisation. But I'm just wondering the context here, Wanda, are there different people for different services, or?
In terms of Mint, what we offer?
Yes, who are there different contexts? If, say, But someone befriend want to refer someone for music therapy, their client is really interested in that. Is there a different contact at Mint, or
No.
who should?
So what we try to do is keep one front door to make it easier. So if you're going through the GP will send the referral, and then in Mint we'll triage, and discussing with the person what their needs are will help go through the list of options of therapeutic interventions that we offer, and then find the right one to help them.
Right.
So it would always be the same point. Go through your GP would always be the first point of call for a referral to Mint.
Because someone else was saying they tried to refer a client directly, so that's not the case. It's always through the GP.
Yeah, it's always going to be through the GP, and that's because they'll also be discussing with us, or they'll have advice and guidance to make sure they're sending it to the right place. And sometimes, someone might think, actually, I want to go to the Mint service, but really it's IAP that will offer the service. So it's the balance between that as well.
That's good. That's clarified it, because I was getting a bit confused there, because I thought it was all through the GP, but then the other person said they tried to contact them direct, and I was like, oh, and so that makes sense. So it's the GP has one single contact, and then depending on that interaction with the client and discussions, then you decide which form of therapy is most suitable for them.
Yeah, and it might be that they enroll on several groups, so they might go to a walking group, drama group, and coping skills. So
well, that's been really helpful. I hope it's helped everyone as well. I find things when you do it from the client's perspective, and this is their profile and what is the process, it kind of makes things a bit more clearer in my head. So I hope it's helped everyone else. We've got time for one last question. We have kind of overrun because I did sell it as a shorter session. So we've got time. We've got 2 minutes. If anyone has a burning question for Wanda or anything else they'd like to share, then you've got 2 minutes now.
Just that if the person is already under Mint for some other service, could we do, because what I was hearing is that it will always be a bit faster through the GP, so we can go through that. Is that kind of their first time accessing Mint? But what if they're already under Mint and we want to help them access an additional service? Would that be a different referral? Is just a conversation we need to have? How would that work? Is it too silly of a question? I'm not sure.
No, it's not a silly question. So if they're already under the service of Mint and they're already seeking treatment, but they've got further needs, we'll either do that internally, so link them up with the right service.
Okay,
but if they've left and they've come back within 6 months and their needs haven't changed, the GP can mention it to us, and again, we'll just quickly go through the process. So it's a bit smoother, but we will triangulate everyone's needs, usually within service. So you won't have to send another referral.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks, Wanda. You've really clarified loads and answered it all really well, so thank you very much. And thanks to everyone else for joining. I hope you found it useful, and see you all. Have a nice weekend, and see you all at the end of September for the next Ealing Mental Health Forum.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Toby.
See you later.
Thank you, Toby.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
That was very good. Bye-bye.